We got and come back with a formula. I'm everybody speechless like Michael Jackson song, you know.
Good evening, guys. So today we have, a wonderful guest. So we have Ryan Strachan from Sweat Equity Holdings. So the goal for this podcast is to highlight, business people, thought leaders, and people creating impact within Jamaica and the wider world. So Ryan is a finance professional. He's a deal maker. He's a rainmaker. He's the guy that gets it done. And I'm saying that modestly. So I'll have Ryan provide us with a quick intro. So he'll discuss, a little bit about his journey and also his background. So Ryan, appreciate the time again. And if you could just give the viewers, a little insight in terms of yourself.
Sure. Well, Joel, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. I applaud you for all the good work you've done so far and for reaching out. It takes courage and it takes initiative, and I'm sure with that you'll continue to go from strength to strength. So please accept my best wishes for the future, and again thanks for the invitation, and good day to your viewers and your subscribers. So I'm a stockbroker, entrepreneur, and as you said, a finance professional. My background would have been in accounts and finance. In the practice, I actually didn't even finish the exams, because when I got to a certain point in the exam process, which we can touch on a little later, I got the opportunity to get into financial services relatively late in my career. But the thing that jumped out at me was that there's no plan B. And so when I was 27, I got into financial services, and I just threw caution to the wind. I started as an investment advisor, which I still am to this day, because one thing I learned in business was that, relationships are literally lifelong, or supposed to be lifelong. And it's not just, you get a client's capital today and then they don't deal with them in 5 years or 10 years. They're literally, short of parting ways or whatever. Well, for the odd reason, it's a lifelong thing. So from 2010, as I said, I threw myself all in. I got into the whole cold calling thing. We can touch on that in a sec. But I guess when I said, so that's the stockbroker side where I have client relationships, and then what that created from a retail standpoint was opportunities for IPOs or for transactions that would serve clients' businesses. And we did a bit of that. We can touch on those specifics. But what underpins it is I'm a lifelong athlete. I used to play soccer, or football to call it, for high school for about 5 years. And then I played cricket for about 15 years. So I played cricket up until I was 27, 28. So it coincided with my entry into financial services. And, by that time, any hopes of playing for Jamaica or West Indies were just, put in the sideline, because I just went into business. But that athletics and that leadership of persons and captaining teams, and, you go up and down the place playing cricket and play cricket in England and captain the university team, I think really best with some measure of interpersonal skills, and that has all got well for my career, for what I do. The ability to treat people well, function well with people, apologize, and just strike some balance in relationships. So that's one of the things I call my secret weapons. Just really having that athletic background, and I've been willing to really work hard. So as far as an introduction, I would say that's Ryan in a nutshell.
All right. So Ryan, thanks for that. So touching on the education piece, you said that, started in accounts and, kind of went into finance after that. If you could just touch a little bit on that, what was, those early years? What did that look like? And, how was the educational journey for you?
So, in Kingston, I went to Campion College, and, that's where I played all the sports. Didn't really study that much, I'll be honest. But what I think Campion exposed me to, apart from, I have some lifelong friends from high school, but it exposed me to persons who were really studious and really focused on self-actualization through education. You couldn't go to Campion in those days, and I'm sure it's the case now, and not know what it is to study. Now, whether or not you decide to study is another story, because I certainly didn't, not while there. But the whole matter of learning about how to apply myself, was something that was not unfamiliar to me. I just never did it, for other reasons. But then I went to college eventually got there, because my journey wasn't the smoothest. As I said, I did no work at Campion, and then I flunked my A-levels, and I had no idea what I was going to do with my life, right? And I then said, my dad was like, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I really don't know. The conversation really wasn't that civil, but it was so long ago I can make it seem anyway, I want. But I got a little job selling cell phones. This was like 2001. Like, cell phones were just coming to Jamaica abroad. And then I went to class in the evening, as being A-levels at the time. I think they call it C-Sec or something like that. No, but I did accounts and math, and I got B's for both of them. I was a little miffed and didn't get an A for accounts, but I had a car accident, so I couldn't really go to the library. But the thing is, though, and what's interesting is I was going to work, going to school after work, and I was still playing cricket, right? And, I got 2 B's, which is, I guess, decent enough. Really should have been an A and a B. But the point is, at Campion the year before, I think I failed both, because the only A-level I passed at Campion was Econ, and I got a D, right? So I got a D, and I don't know if it's O's or whatever they call it, but I did not pass. And funny story, I went to quality academics for the evening class, and Wayne Robinson, I said, I'm not doing accounts. And I remember he said, Wayne Robinson was the principal then, he's a principal at JC now, Jamaica College, and he said, well, I'm sure you can do accounts at a very high level here, but if you don't do accounts, we're not gonna let you in. And that was life defining, even though I was a little bit, I felt a little cute or a little embarrassed, because all my friends graduated from Campion and were in college and whatever, and I was going to effectively do over 6-4. But I think when you want something, you have to just put those feelings to the side. Yeah, you feel it. It doesn't feel the most comfortable, but it was my fault. I had to own it. And, got to be in accounts, but I never wanted to be an account. I did it. I did the exams, but deep down I knew there was something else out there for me. Don't ask me how I knew. I wanted something a bit more dynamic that wasn't limited to a location. And the truth is, had I said that to persons at the time, which I didn't, because they would have said I'm crazy. They were like, what you mean you want a job that's gonna have you all over the place, or have an occupation? What do you mean that you want to be, wealthy by the time you're 35 or whatever the age is, right? You want to have above average experiences, because at the end of the day, money in and of itself to me is just an inanimate object. It's about what it allows you to do. And I think that ambition was what I had. I had this yearning to do just things that I could conceive. I feel like if something comes in your mind as a human being, it's probably for you to do. But I think we fall into the trap sometimes of suppressing our thoughts and our imagination, and then people become a shell of themselves, without realizing. Anyhow, so I did accounts, but I was as an accountant, and it was 2000 must have been 2002. I was in my friend's dorm room, or flat, as we call it in England, and I was reading The Economist, and I was reading about these guys who were stockbrokers who had like on one door on the City of London streets or whatever, and they were going to San Tropez and holiday, and they take the subway to work, and they're pulling down all this money, and nobody knew who they were. Nobody knew what they did. So they were successful, but they never had the notoriety that came with success. And I said, I want to do that. But then the crazy part was, I said, I want to do that in Jamaica. I didn't want to stay in England and do it. So again, being crazy, right? So I left college the day after my last exam. I had no idea what I was going to do back home, but I just said, well, there's stuff for me to do at home, and that was 21 years ago, and I've never left to go back to England for work, and and it's kind of worked out. So that's how I got to financial services in essence. It started up here, and then it actually working through that took about 6 years, but we can get into that short.
Yeah. Well, so that's I would say an impactful journey, right? So going from Jamaica to England and then back to Jamaica, having that thought, okay, I know where the destination is, right? But not necessarily knowing how to get there and where to go, and then finally reaching there, right? So it's just perseverance and will, so to speak. So touching on that aspect and the deal making. So for you, why deal making, or why stocks?
So it took me about from 2004 when I came home. I got into financial services 2010. Okay? No, 6 years. I'm 42. 6 years is really not that long, but it's a long enough time for me at 42. But at 22, that's a third of my life, right? So you can imagine 6 years felt like eternity, and that's 6 years looking back, right? At that time, when you wait a year for something, it's like you've literally waited for a long time, because really that's one of my first or second years being an adult. You get what I'm saying? So when I had gone through the Deloittes and the careers and whatever, and the ups and downs, of just work at the time, and careers was really good because I went to, Costa Rica for 3 months, and I was in Trinidad for 2 weeks, and you get to learn a little bit about business travel and being on the road and being an expat and whatever. But all these experiences you accumulate. I'd applied to every job, every broker in the industry, and I never got one job offer. And I mean, such was my hunger to get in the industry. I used to read every newspaper, every business paper. It was, to this day, it's Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, right? Business news in Jamaica. I would read them like from cover to cover every week. I knew all the personalities, I knew all the market news, I knew everything. But when I was applying or interviewing, those who would interview me anyway, they'd say, for one reason or the other, they didn't want to hire. So Chris Williams, there's a great summary. This Chris Williams from formerly approved, when he was at NCB Capital Markets, I written him a letter just asking for guidance, saying I wanted a job in the industry, and he called me one day, and I was shocked, right? Because at home, I did not have a job. I'd left my, the summer gig I'd done with my father, and his business was about to close or to, change that. And Chris just called me and gave me some guidance. He just said, try sales. If you're going to come into this industry in Jamaica, it's too small. It's not big enough for you to be a trader because the market is not that deep. And if they say try sales, and I'll get you a psychometric test, the first stage in the evaluation process. And so truth is where it happened. I never got the job, right? So all of that was just disappointment. But I never thought about disappointment for that long, because I realized that even though I never got what I wanted in terms of that job per se, I got to learn. I spoke to someone I did not know, right? I spoke to a senior executive in the industry, and that would all go well for my future. I don't know how, but what's interesting is in 2010, when I had grown a little bit and I wasn't as reserved anymore, and I had all this information accumulated, so when I applied to Maybe in the call, I could write a cover letter that nobody else wrote, and go into interviews, because I'd done so many interviews up to that point. I knew based on practice, if I went into an interview, I would get the job, and that's what happened. And when I went to Mayberry, I was a young advisor, right? I mean, maybe 2 months in the boardroom at Mayberry, Chris was in the boardroom presenting on a company that he's trying to raise money for, and that company is called Proven. And I never said to him, boy, Chris, I wouldn't call him Chris at the time anyway. So I said Williams, and he's not gonna, he'd like, call me Willie or whatever. But I said, if we're to cross paths again, we will. But for now, I have work to do. And then perhaps I can say, well, here's the body of work I've done, just to say hello, just to know, just not to be like, oh, I know you and I was here for this. No, but to be like, well, I'd actually done this work then. And then, funny story. One day he saw me out. He's like, yo, I've been hearing about you. I've been seeing the work. And yeah, go on, if you know him, that's how he talks. And that was like 3 years later. So how I got in the start, that guidance was there. But deal that really stoked the fire, I'll never forget it. Jamaica Pegasus Hotel was a public asset trading on Jamaica Stock Exchange. I don't remember the mechanics of it, but eventually it was being sold. It was a contentious deal, and Scotia Investments did the deal at the time. And Mayberry, there was a structure that was it was a commission-based structure, right? So remember I told about the experiences and all of that I wanted to have. I'm thinking to myself, well, if I didn't deal like the Pegasus on my commission structure, I would make 250,000 US, right? And so then now my brain starts to work and say, well, what does the person who closed a deal like that look like? I mean, how did they dress? How did they talk? How did they function? Where did they go? And so very quickly in my brain, I started to condition myself or have that framework in my mind of what I wanted to be like. Because I said there is no way a broker could get that deal and I can't get a deal like that. But the beauty of it is it was M&A on one hand, but it was also a trade done over the stock exchange on the other hand. So it's that dual element. And I remember I saw that the company representatives in the newspaper who I know by that way name there, and I said, there's absolutely no way that is out of my reach. And from that very day, this was in 2010 early, I said that is the quintessential cut out of the newspaper and put it on your wall type deal that I was gung ho, and I said that is what I want to do because that's in line with what I like. And you can make some money doing it. So then, and I can pause on it. We had activity targets, call X number of people, X point appointment. And what I realized is that gave you control of the client acquisition process. Get the cold calling people, right? Essentially, if you hook somebody and you do well for them, that's your relationship, right? So then I said, you know what? I want to take that cold calling and selling skill and combine it with research and analysis, because if I get a client, it's not just going to be because, they like me as a person. Like, you have to be able to add value. And the one thing I never wanted was to get a client, because you take cold call them, you have to call them a lot of times or meet or whatever, usually, especially early. And then when they're ready to talk now, they ask me a question and I say, oh, I need to call my research analyst. Because that's bad for two reasons. One, it doesn't look good on me and I can't have an impromptu conversation, which means I can't go to their house, I can't go to the bar, I can't go on the boat, because then if they ask a question I have to call some guy in the office to come over. And then two, if we close the deal, I have to share the money. So I said, let me do both functions. So when I secure something, I keep on the money, because nobody can then say, oh, well, research helped you with this, or, we have to get an analyst to come with it. No, it's me alone. So, my fee. So that's how stocks really became a thing.
So you're essentially pulling out as many tools out of your toolkit, so to speak, to get it across the finish line. And so touching on the deal, I know you said Pegasus was one of those deals you stuck up on your whiteboard. And any other say dream deals that you've worked on or thought about that you'd want to have on like your mantle place?
Yeah, quite a few actually. I think a few deals I've done. So I had stockbrokerage clients for EPMA, right? So from 2010, I had about, the accounts target per month was like 8. Most advisors were doing like 3. I was doing like 14. Eventually, it took me 6 months to open an account. I thought they're going to fire, right? Let's just be clear about it. And eventually I get to like 14, 15, whatever, I'm growing aggressively. And a lot of people I used to cold call, because I built my whole thing off cold calling. And I remember I cold called a lady once. I've never told this story publicly, I think, but this is going to be how this thing came together. I cold called a lady. That's the from the Jamaica Manufacturers book that I had mentioned off air before. And the email was like something at CCC Scoops, and I have no idea who these people are. So one was calling it, said, listen, you know, we have this, are you interested in it? Can we talk? And I said, can we talk? Just can I get an understanding of your business? I have no idea what the business, and no answer. Then she just hangs up the phone and she says, she won't hung up. She said, no, not interested, very abruptly, and hung up. I didn't really take no as anything more than just no, or just not yet. Now, the other idea I got from Chris is he had an email at the time. He would update his clients on, I don't know if it's every day, every 3 days, or whatever. He could call it Willing News. And I said, you know, that's cool, because by the time I started to close deals or accounts, I never had the time to call client every week because the book was just growing so fast. So then I said there must be a way to keep in touch with everybody so that they hear from me, but they don't need to call me unless it's, or they don't need me to call them because they're busy, but we're staying in touch. I said, let me just copy Chris's email. And then it became a thing called Ryan's Ramblings or whatever, where eventually it became Week in Review. And that email has been going on for 15 years. But here's the point. When the lady said no to me, I said to her, I think another time I called her, she said no or whatever, you know. And I said to her, can I add it to my email? You know, it's just my own views on the market. And she said, yeah, man, no problem. So I add her. This is my first rodeo at the time. It's 2010, you know, this 15 years. And around 3 months later, I get an email from this person, and she says, Dolphin Cove IPO is out. What do you think? I said, boy, you know, it's okay. I think it adds some value. And she says, okay, come and see me. The same lady who said no, you know, when she actually responded to one of my emails, right? The guy goes out every Friday. I go to see her, and I have no idea who this person. And when I go to see her, I walk in, and there's ice cream tubs like all around her, like product samples and whatever. And I said, this lady owns Devon House ice cream. Crazy, right? But the story, it gets better. So we get real close. We're close to this day. You know, Carol's a really, really nice person. I love her. And one day she calls me and she says, you know, my son has a little business. I want you to talk to him. So I say, well, sure. I mean, you know, I'm like, of course. 1 is you, 2 is your son, 3. I'm just so hungry. I mean, that son turns out to be Chris Clark, who is the owner of Creamy, right? And then so I had his account, and I left, and I went to SSL and in 2011, and obviously I have nothing to do with all this madness going on. I can't even nothing about that. So when I'm there, eventually they come over, and one day he emails me out the blue and says, yo, I want to go public. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't. What do you mean you want to go public? He says, I want to go public, but I want your pitch on it. I said, all right. I won't say who we pitched against, but we got the deal. And so we did that IPO in 2013, either March or May. I think it's May. And the point though is, one, I was the first advisor, I believe, and I'm sure, to refer an IPO for at that time. I don't think many have since, but I was the first, and I was first by at least 4 years, right? To have done one. I've done several since, but 1, 2, I got paid off it. So, you know, the fees were, you know, this says, but you kind of make a little money doing this thing. And then 3, it was the motivation to go on. So that I would say was a landmark transaction for me, the IPO Creamy. And shortly, immediately after that, because I don't believe in complacency, right? You can do something once, but then it's like, yo, how can I? The easiest way to kill an accomplishment is to leave it there. I secured a corporate bond raise for Jamaican teas. Now the funny part of that story is I wasn't even in Jamaica when they were signing the document, doing the pictures, the official signing for the media. I wasn't there because I'd gone away to like just cool out, because those days I was only sleeping like 3 hours a night, 4 hours a night, because I just become a manager and whatever. So it's working really, really, really hard. So those 2 deals told me what was possible. And I think I kind of carried that as my motivation, because shortly after I came out of frontline sales for a few years, I left SSL in 2015. I come out of sales in 2013, kind of gone into investment banking a little bit, but then I left and I got back in sales. So in terms of the landmark deals, that was it for me. Creamy and then Jamaican teas. As far as deals I want to do, you know, working on a few. One fell through today. We've been working on it for a few years. Disappointing, that deal that really disrupted the market. But, where there's life, there's hope. But, like, in terms of if there's a transaction I really want to do, it'd be one or two. I can say this public. One, I still think 138 student living has tremendous potential in terms of once they get the equity required, which is about 20 plus million US, that will be a second Trans Jamaica in terms of dividend payments. That's one. The other one is the drainage for downtown Kingston and water lines. Replacement of those is about it is said it's $1 billion US. I don't know if it's that, but that is what's required for downtown Kingston to get permits to have skyscrapers like downtown, man. That's another deal I think about a lot that I'd love to get involved in, because I think it's transformational, and I believe Jamaica has that kind of potential. And so that's kind of what I think about a lot, those two transactions. And I can mention them because I'm not working on either right now, so let's see what the future brings.
Yeah, for sure. So touching on, the landscape, what do you see in terms of, the business landscape and companies, innovation, technology, and so on?
My view, I think it is a landscape that rewards effort. And here's why I say that. And I can only use my experience. People, I think, give up too easily when they're trying to get things done. I'm the quintessential where there's a will, there's a way type person. I think there are a lot of business people in Jamaica doing well, and they're not going to come out and broadcast the fact that they're doing well. And they're not going to come and engage you. You have to go and engage them. The problem I find is that people trying to do things go to the same 50 people for funding, or the same 50 people to share the ideas or to pitch. But there's so many other persons out there. That's one thing. The other thing I say in terms of it rewards effort, a lot of the business plans I've seen are half-baked. When you start to ask questions or whatever, they can't give you an answer. They never thought about this, and the business turns on it. I've had situations where I've told people that, listen, I think this is a flaw in your operation, and they didn't like it. But to this day, the same flaw exists. Some of them gone public and they're still having the same issue. So I think the landscape is fertile, but that's why foreigners appreciate it more. That's why foreigners tend to come to Jamaica and do so well, because they come with a new belief. In other words, they come with the belief that there is a way to achieve this, and they view it from an opportunistic standpoint. And I say that because I think we are still at the stage of our development where opportunities are not just going to jump out at you, right? That's what makes an emerging market an emerging market. It's coming out of a particular phase it found itself in. But at the same time, the emerging markets are the ones that they're the most opportunities, which is why it's expected that they'll grow faster than the developed economies, right? And as such, I think maybe because it's locals, we may be around it too much, like we're familiar or too familiar with the Jamaican, ethos and just way of life. But I think we miss sometimes the opportunities. Most certainly, I can say that in my line of business, when I took on equity, it was not a thing. Like, people were not doing that, and still are not, right? I think because it took a lot of time, took a lot of effort. A lot of people were focused on fixed income, they're focused on repos, they're focused on everything else on the summer. Everything else, but what I think was really the real value drive created a lane for me. It's given me everything I have, but that's one person. So you may say, well, why is it not 10 people, 20 people? Because I don't have 5% of the market, and I never will, because it's just too big. And so I said that to say that I see opportunity. You may ask somebody else, they'll say that they don't see any, but then you dig deeper. They made bad judgment decisions on things they really should not have been participating, or they let somebody trick them. Whatever the case is, right? And so then to that person, there'll always be issues. But I say all the time, opportunities are not going to come and jump out at you, because if they did, then everybody will grab after them. And as such, I see tons of business. I can say for me that even in my business, we have a lot of business. I am curtailing my growth by not hiring a lot of people yet because I really want to ease into the process. It's only been 2 months. I mean, we've had an announcement already. We have had some other things going on, but we could have had 2 had whatever happened not happen in 2 months, not even 2 months fully yet. And as such, and then we're working on actively 5 or 6 more as we speak. So, I mean, I think a lot of people suffer or don't do well enough because they don't come out of the comfort zone of their office or their home and get out. For me, I would drive to Montego Bay for a signature before the highway, and I've done it before. I mean, I was younger, so it was easier, but I've driven to Mobile for a signature, right? Because if I don't go, then I'm not going to get the business. So if you have to put yourself in the position to achieve something. What the hell it does is the material. Put yourself in the position, and that's the only way it's going to happen. I can't tell you when it's going to happen, but I can tell you it's going to happen. And if it happens, it will happen more frequently with the passenger types.
Understood. So I think, based on what you've outlined, your viewpoint is there's opportunity, across the board. It takes grit, it takes determination, perseverance, and everything else. But there are opportunities. So in terms of, future goals, what's in the future for you? Where do you see things, 5-10 years from now, in terms of your aspirations and also, Jamaica or the Caribbean as a whole?
It's really hard for me to tell you 5-10 years. I tell you why, because I did not see myself owning a business in the industry. So, when I started, that was never my goal. In fact, I only started thinking about owning my own thing in 2019, and at that point I was 9 years in. And so it wasn't planned. But I started to say, now that I'm in the space, I see myself doing more of what I'm doing now, which is the same, stock brokerage deals, right? I see myself doing more deals. I view the world as one market, just like we'll do 2 deals with 2 private companies, or 1 public, 1 private that I would have seen, and the deal that fell out the other day was 1 public, 1 private. But yeah, that's fine. I can see myself doing public to public, and we'll have one of those working on. I remember working on for about 4 years now. Probably about 5 years actually. When I did Spur-Tree's IPO, I said to people that this doesn't happen overnight. I did Spur-Tree's IPO in 2020, I think it's 2021. I've been working on what would eventually become that IPO since 2010, because that's the first time I made a cold contact with one of the owners of Spur-Tree, unwittingly. And as a relationship deepened and I observed the brand, I realized that this is an IPO prospect, but I'm not going to get it if I look for it. I have to be close to the people who I liked, so it was very easy. And when they were ready, I am top of mind. So it's not me trying to make them ready, it's just being there when they are ready. And that's what happens. So I think more deals. I want to go into the family office space, offer the services to 1 or 2 prominent families. They'll find me. One has found me, so we'll see how that goes. I'm also a FIFA agent, so I do expect that my players will, a couple will go on to become really good professionals. They'll be clients, so I do see myself giving myself some time to travel with them, and I do think that the agency will actually become a global organization. I do believe we have a partner in Europe already. I do think we'll have an office in a European country, wherever my first player settles. But these are young boys now. They're like 12, yeah? So when they're 18 or 19, we'll set up an office wherever they settle. And I think we'll do football, we'll do cricket and football now. And we'll see if we're adding any other in the sports. But I do spend a lot of time in Miami, so I do see us having an American office, and so we could potentially scout NFL players, NBA, and we could have divisional heads for that. But I do, and that's Sweat Equity Sports, and I'm a 1/3 partner in that, so I do see that. But those clients would feed into the brokerage business, So that's kind of how I think I see things shaping up. Just be global, but holding things together and adding the value or creating the value is really what gets me out of bed bed in the morning. I believe in value creation. I'm not trying to give a client 5% on an instrument. I'm trying to give them 50%. I'm trying to create a new paradigm for these persons. When we're buying NCB at $20 and we sold it at $200, that was life changing for the client. Clients have more wealth. There's more activity for the brokerage house, and in turn, everybody wins. Most of all, the client wins, relationship is deepened, and then now you're building on that. And that's exactly what has happened for me over the last 15 years. So that's what I think. I think global ambitions. I want to play a part in Jamaica becoming first world country. I don't think we're that far, but we do have some things we have to get over. But I think as well, we're going to be investment grade shortly. Debt to GDP is falling precipitously. The minute that falls into the 50s, right away we're among the leading economies in the world, because all our financial metrics are on point. We just need to use this capital, this room, to build out the infrastructure to make sure there's water everywhere, there's good roads everywhere, we have organized housing, we eliminate squatting and the informal existence that so many of our citizens have. And I do think that's going to contribute further. But my fear, I'll tell you this, I think locals run the risk of missing the boat and being usurped by foreigners if they don't get the act together. Because capitalism or capital markets are no respecter of persons. It's really who moves faster, and I feel like we spend so much time speaking down about the country because we're used to it. I understand, right? That we miss the forest for the trees. So that's my fear.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's, having that first mover advantage is important, right? Being on the ground is important, knowing the land, knowing the ground, so to speak, right? I think that's important. You touched on some of the outreach, working with the youth and sports and everything. From your point of view, what's the impact of, social programs and community development in terms of, what you do and everything else?
So I was a 3-term president of G2K, which is the Young Professional Affiliate Jamaica Labour Party. And I'm also a past president of Roach of Kingston. I'm also a member of, soon to be a member of Grace Family Church. So one of the things I'll say about outreach for me is, so I got in G2K again relatively late. So I joined at 33. Most there are contemporaries who joined at, not contemporaries, but there are persons joined at 18, 19. So already right away I joined as a relatively senior person in terms of age, because by convention persons tend to exit by the time they're 40. For me, G2K was helpful. For obviously the political side, we just put that to the side for a second. It allowed me to engage with younger persons and to kind of see the world through their eyes, because I came in as an executive who had this growing thing going, all these relationships with corporate titans and whatever. But I had been so far removed from high school. I mean, by that time, I left high school 15 years. So I had no idea what the kid or the younger person of that time was going through. So it just so happened that I spent a lot of time with youngsters asking me how you did it. I'm dealing with this. What do you recommend? What do you think? When I became president, then it transitioned to, go out to, raise capital or whatever we would support. We got some student scholarships, we got some students, laptops and whatever else, to get them through school and all of that. And, some got bursaries and whatever the case may be. And so it was very important. It was very fulfilling. But I think the best part was seeing them grow. You see somebody who get a bursary for, get a job or become a lawyer, become a banker, or they finish the degree, right? They go on and get a job in a law firm, and then all of a sudden they're like, involved in high profile cases and really becoming the best version of themselves. And you in your own small way feel like you contributed to that. And it's a good feeling. I think for me as a businessman, that was the biggest part about my time in G2K. I feel like the batch who I had and the opportunity to interact with most closely, I feel like I was really able to make an impact on some life. Yes, me and some argued or whatever, but I felt like overall I was able to impart a positive influence on them, but more also them on me. right? Because it forced me now to take a stock of where I was. What are my priorities? What am I doing right? What am I not doing right? What can I do better? And that was the number one thing for me, to serve in the political fields with some of these guys and, get to know them, get to know their parents, their backgrounds. You see some get married, some have kids and start to become real adults in their own right. I think that was the biggest thing. It gave me a roundedness to my experience that I never had, because Rotary, again, relatively later in life. Well, I was a young Rotarian, but for service clubs, it was the first service club I was involved in, because I was so heavily involved in athletics in school. I never had time or interest for any service club, none. I never joined any of them, not Key Club, not Interact. None of them. It was just straight sport, So that was unique and that extracurricular activity as an adult was very helpful. And again, it's even further reinforced that we're not alone on this planet. We have reason to work with others, to contribute to the betterment of others. And that's the biggest takeaway for me, from that whole game, that we can build things together. And we can really build camaraderie as alignment dictates. We're not going to connect with everybody, but the person we do connect with, we can really build good friendships with. And I really think I came out of it with a lot of that.
Definitely. I think the impact of giving back is it's exponential, right? As you said, seeing it and witnessing the growth. And when it comes to yourself, what would you say to your say your 20-year self, based on where you currently are in terms of your journey?
That's a good question. I tell you, I don't know where this came from, and I'm being very honest with you, but I have always lived my own life. I can't state to you there's anything I did my whole journey that I did it because it's what somebody would have wanted me to do. Not my parents, not if I didn't want to do it, it wasn't gonna happen. I went to college because I wanted to go. I did not apply to college at first. I didn't want to go. I knew I didn't want to. I knew I was not going to stay in Jamaica because I wanted to play cricket. And at the time, you really couldn't have been at the University of the West Indies and play cricket. So I wasn't interested in that. I wanted to be in a structured environment where I could play cricket as a priority. And that only really became a thing, I don't know, maybe 5 years after I left. So then, when I went to my father and I said, boy, where in England can we go? And, he said, go wherever and get some information. I did, and, found, he got 5 schools, and then, it worked out. So for me, as a 20-year-old, it would be the same advice, to live your life. I've never been the type to follow crowds, and so because of that, I don't have that, I don't have that sense of remorse or regret, because I literally did it my way. It sounds bad, but it's just the truth. Like, I just did it my way. I did take the licks. I felt like a failure for a number of years. I looked at people who I grew up alongside who were doing what I thought was amazing things, and it was amazing in and of itself, and I just felt like I just wasn't doing anything. And I said, well, it's just my journey, so let's just do it. When I got fired from jobs, I think twice, for reasons that had nothing to do with me. It was the Lord's way of shifting me or steering me in the direction I was to be in. It never felt that way at the time. And I'm in the aftermath of it looking like, this is madness. Like, what's the purpose of living? Because I go to work and I work hard, and then if you can find a reason to cut my contract short or fire me, and I just didn't understand. I left careers on the cloud, but then that's what got me to JMA, and at JMA I got this book, and then I've had tons of clients coming to the JMA. So if I never left careers, I would not be at the JMA, right? If I never left Deloitte, but I resigned from Deloitte, I wouldn't have been at careers, but I applied to careers before I got to Deloitte, and I was after taking 6 months to get a job. You know what I'm saying? And so it's I literally feel like I just did it the way and I credit that, but I did it the way I felt in my heart I should do it. And I took the licks for it, right? Don't ever think for a second that everybody was just rolling out the red carpet and say, go for it. No, it was the opposite. And people look at me and tell me that's crazy all the time. To this day, like, they say I'm crazy now because, oh, well, you're doing this thing in finance. Why you want to become a football agent? This is some of the same people who said finance was not going to work. Like, they said you are a madman, But what I realize is, if you're gonna achieve extraordinary results, you want something that people don't have. You can't do what they do. I know I did not want an ordinary job. I did not want an ordinary existence. I didn't want 2 weeks of vacation a year. I want to be able to vacation when I want. But I didn't know that comes with, when it doesn't mean you're going to be able to sleep when you want every night because you have stuff you have to do. That's the trade-off. And I'm fine with that. I wanted to be able to do a deal in any part of the world. Sure, you go to the meeting, but then you go to the meeting and you leave. You have to go straight to the airport. You don't get to sleep. You have to go back home, but you get to live the part of life you want. The other side of it comes with it. You work. I mean, we're doing this interview at like midnight. Your viewers know, right? But if you weren't available, we would not have been able to do it because I literally don't have another window. But then we have this documented now, and this is what it takes, and that's the 20-year-old self. I would say just live your life. But believe in yourself. You have to believe in yourself, even when it hurts, even when you cry and you just feel worthless. Because I've been there. When imposter syndrome eats you to the core of your being, right? I've been in interviews and sometimes the people probably see me looking at them crazy and I'm like, I wonder if they didn't know I actually have no idea what I'm talking about. But the truth is, like, that is what the things that people don't talk about, when this deal came up, the one that was in the public, I valued it, valued the business. I found the buyer. So it was literally something that I was blessed to literally pull together on all sides, and people will say, before they were like, well, it's crazy. Why would you do something like that? It's not gonna work. It's PR and whatever to work up, and that's the truth. And so to my 20-year-old self, I just say, just do it your way, for better or for worse, because you're not gonna die with what ifs. And that became a for me. I don't have a what if because I've tried it. When I used to work, I used to write music and record and whatever, and I got to work. I work a full day, and I look a studio in my bedroom, in my closet, in my parents' house, set up and whatever, record music. I liked it. I didn't want to become an artist in the end because I didn't like the studio and people criticizing and whatever. But thought my work ethic. So them days I sleep 4 hours a night, That's what the people in the hard work is never wasted. You are never going to lose from working hard. You may learn how to do it better, or you may learn you don't but that act of hard work is never wasted. It is not whack. It's literally what will drive it to success. So anytime I see persons who don't want to work hard or don't have it in there, I know that person not when everybody is successful works hard or has the capacity to work hard. And I just say, work hard, and don't be complex. My last point on this is, as in a small group, this must be going close to 30 years now. Not so long, but 27 or so. Everybody in the group was asked what their mission statement or their life statement. So people had some elaborate thing. And mine was dare to believe. And I don't know if the persons in that group remember their statements, but I remember dare to believe. And it was very succinct because it was like, you can imagine this thing. Well, dare to believe it can be for you. Dare if you dream of yourself, building 50 floor skyscrapers or whatever. Dare to believe that it can happen and then work towards it, but don't leave it in your head. If you leave it in your head, it's just there, and then you start to become yourself, And that's one of the things that it's as granular as this. I had buck teeth when I was younger, and I remember I used to say, boy, I'm going to get braces as soon as I can because I'm going to be on TV. And I go in the newspaper and I forget my smile card. And people are like, you're a lunatic. Like, who thinks like that? I'd be like my file photo, I've been on TV for 14 years or something like that. You know, I didn't go on TV anymore. I've done it so many times I can't even count. But the thought came to me and it was legitimized because I believed it, and it happened. You know, the things that this is the most open I've ever been in an interview. By the way, I must tell you, these are stories a lot of people don't know. Very few people know. But I just one, obviously the setting, and it's I think you really allow me to speak. But two, I just feel like I think somebody will benefit from knowing that it is possible. You know, it is possible. And I know, as long as I'm alive, I'm sure my journey will continue. But if it ends tomorrow, I can tell you, I gave it all I had. Literally everything. You know, I've left no money on the table. I've done everything. And I still have more to do. But if it ends tomorrow, I'll give that everything. And I can live with that.
All right. Yeah, well said. And, I definitely can feel, the passion and, and the confidence in terms of that statement. And, the future is bright, as we said, in terms of Jamaica, the Caribbean, the world. And, there's endless opportunities. So we appreciate the time again, Ryan. So in terms of connecting with you, where can people find you? How can they get in touch with you?
Well, I'm Brian Strachan on Twitter. I think my Twitter is, on LinkedIn. I think it's R.A. Strachan, I'll check. But Twitter or X is 5 Solae, which is 5 SOLAE. I think LinkedIn is, let me check right now. I think it's R.A. Strachan though. I believe so. Well, just search Ryan Strachan, I'm right there. And on Instagram, I'm Legacy Partner. So I haven't gotten it so uniform in terms of having, the same thing everywhere, and it's fine, but it's just meant to be that way. Funny story, like the Legacy Partner name came, it was like they do it after 5 attempts at just different names with Legacy, which is actually supposed to be the operating business, but we're just trying to incorporate the company. It's taking a while, and so we have to use something. So we use Sweat Equity Holdings. But this logo is actually the Legacy logo. I don't know if you can see it. So this is actually supposed to be the operating business, but okay. So that's what the partner is. And so that's how they contacted me. info@sweatequityholdings.com is the email, and I'm online more often than I'm on the phone. So the easiest way to find me, send me an email, send me a message. I have 0 inboxes unread. All of my inboxes are fully read, and I try to respond within an hour. So that's all easily found.
All right. Man. So what I'll do is I'll drop some of the links in the description, and within the video, and so people can connect with you. But yeah, Ryan, appreciate the time, and I like the candidness also. This has probably been one of the most candid interviews also. So I appreciate that, and giving people kind of, a lot of times people see the glitz and the glamour, right? But they don't understand, the story and the hardship and the struggles and the ups and downs, right? That comes with success. So, I appreciate, you giving that in-depth insight in terms of some of your journey. So yeah, look forward to, the future and, connecting, as Cartel would say, what this unknown knows, I'm out.
Yourself up, that's it up. And listen, let's do it again. So up to the next.
All right, yeah man, we'll connect.
Yeah man, for sure. Take care.
Cool. Take care.